Did you know that over 40 million people in the UK are now living in poverty? Or that the average household is spending £3,500 more per year just to afford the same basic necessities? If it feels like your money disappears faster than ever, you're not imagining it. From rent and energy bills to food and transport, everything is getting shockingly expensive, and millions of people are struggling to keep up. But here's the real question. Why is this happening? Is it greedy corporations? A broken economy? Government failure? Or something even bigger? The truth is, the UK's cost of living crisis isn't caused by just one thing. It's a perfect storm of skyrocketing inflation, record high energy prices, wage stagnation, and economic uncertainty. And the worst part? There's no sign of it getting better anytime soon. But don't worry. We've done the research and uncovered the 10 biggest reasons why life in the UK has become so expensive. Some of them may shock you. Others will make you furious. But most importantly, they'll help you understand what's really going on and what it means for your future. So stick around till the end, because this is information you need to know. Let's break it all down. Number 1. Inflation at a record high. Have you noticed that your grocery bill keeps climbing, even though you're buying the same items? That's because inflation in the UK has reached record levels, making everyday essentials more expensive than ever. Inflation refers to the rate at which prices for goods and services increase over time. While a small amount of inflation is normal in any economy, the UK has been experiencing historically high inflation rates, peaking at over 10% in 2022, the highest in 40 years. But why is this happening? Several factors have contributed to this surge. Supply chain disruptions. The COVID-19 pandemic severely impacted global supply chains, leading to shortages and higher costs for raw materials and finished products. Energy price shocks. The rising cost of gas and electricity has made it more expensive for businesses to produce and transport goods, passing the cost on to consumers. Labour shortages. A lack of workers, partly due to Brexit and the pandemic, has forced companies to increase wages, which in turn drives up prices. Weak pound sterling. The depreciation of the pound has made imports more expensive, further increasing the cost of goods. To combat inflation, the Bank of England has raised interest rates, making borrowing more expensive in an attempt to slow down spending. However, this also means higher mortgage payments, credit card debt, and loan costs, putting even more financial pressure on households. With wages failing to keep pace with inflation, many families are finding it harder to afford basic necessities. Until inflation is brought under control, the cost of living crisis in the UK will continue to impact millions. But inflation is just one piece of the puzzle. Number 2. Skyrocketing energy prices. Have you noticed that your energy bills have doubled or even tripled over the past year? You're not alone. The UK is facing an unprecedented energy crisis, with gas and electricity prices reaching record highs. This has put millions of households under extreme financial pressure, forcing some to choose between heating their homes and buying food. But why have energy costs surged so dramatically? There are several key reasons. Reliance on gas imports. The UK heavily depends on imported gas, and when global gas prices rise, households feel the impact almost immediately. Unlike countries with significant domestic energy production, the UK is vulnerable to international price fluctuations. The war in Ukraine, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, led to sanctions and supply cuts, which disrupted global energy markets. As a result, European countries, including the UK, faced higher costs for gas and electricity. Energy suppliers. Going bust. Several UK energy companies collapsed when they couldn't handle the volatile market, leaving fewer providers and reducing competition. This meant higher prices for consumers. The price cap increase. The UK's energy price cap, which limits how much suppliers can charge, was repeatedly raised to keep up with soaring wholesale prices. This led to sudden, sharp increases in household bills. Lack of investment in renewables. While the UK has made progress in renewable energy, it still relies heavily on fossil fuels, making it vulnerable to price shocks. Even with government support schemes, many families continue to struggle with energy poverty. And with colder months bringing higher heating costs, the crisis shows no signs of easing soon. Number 3. Housing crisis and rising rents. Trying to find an affordable place to live in the UK feels impossible these days. Rents are skyrocketing, house prices are unaffordable, and mortgage rates are soaring, making the housing crisis worse than ever. Whether you're renting or looking to buy, the cost of having a roof over your head has never been higher. So what's driving this crisis? Severe housing shortage. The UK has not built enough homes to keep up with demand, leading to a major supply and demand imbalance. With more people competing for fewer homes, landlords and sellers can charge exorbitant prices. Rising mortgage rates. The Bank of England's interest rate hikes have made borrowing more expensive. Many homeowners are seeing their monthly payments increase by hundreds of pounds, while first-time buyers struggle to afford mortgages at these high rates. Buy-to-let boom. Many properties are being bought by investors for rental income, reducing the number of homes available for regular buyers. This pushes up prices and leaves renters with fewer affordable options. Increased demand for rentals. With home ownership becoming out of reach for many more people are renting, leading to higher rental costs. Cities like London, Manchester, and Bristol have seen rent prices rise by over 10% in just a year. Short-term lets and Airbnb. Many landlords prefer short-term lets because they can charge higher nightly rates, reducing the availability of long-term rentals and driving up rents. With wages not keeping pace, many renters are spending over 50% of their income on rent, making it nearly impossible to save for a home. Without urgent housing reforms, the crisis will only get worse. Number 4. Stagnant wages and low pay growth. Have you ever felt like no matter how hard you work, your paycheck just isn't stretching far enough? That's because wages in the UK have failed to keep up with inflation, leaving millions of workers struggling to cover basic expenses. Even though the cost of living is rising rapidly, salaries have barely budged, making it harder to afford necessities like food, rent, and energy bills. So why are wages stagnating while everything else gets more expensive? Inflation outpacing wage growth. While prices for goods and services have surged, average wages haven't risen fast enough to keep up. This means that even if you're earning more than before, your real purchasing power has actually declined. Increase in low-paid and gig economy jobs. Many new jobs are in low-wage sectors or part of the gig economy, where workers have little job security and few benefits like pensions or sick pay. This keeps overall wages down. Public sector pay freezes. Nurses, teachers, and other public sector workers have faced years of below-inflation pay rises, making it harder for them to cope with the rising cost of living. This has led to strikes and demands for fairer wages. Weak union power. With fewer workers in unions, employees have less bargaining power to demand higher wages, allowing businesses to keep salaries low while profits rise. Economic uncertainty. Many businesses are hesitant to raise wages due to fears of recession, Brexit-related issues, and supply chain disruptions, leading to continued pay stagnation. With wages failing to rise in line with inflation, many households are struggling just to break even. The next challenge? Soaring food prices, making even the weekly shop a financial burden. Number 5. Food prices soaring. Have you noticed that your weekly grocery bill has gone up, even though you're buying the same items? That's because food prices in the UK have soared to record highs, making it more expensive than ever to put food on the table. Essentials like milk, bread, and vegetables have all seen double-digit price increases, forcing many families to cut back or rely on food banks. So, what's causing this surge in food prices? Rising production costs. Farmers and food producers are paying more for fertilizer, animal feed, and fuel, all of which drive up the cost of food. These extra costs are then passed on to consumers. Supply chain disruptions. The COVID-19 pandemic and Brexit have caused delays and shortages in food imports, making it harder to stock shelves and pushing up prices. Energy costs. Affecting food production, food processing, refrigeration, and transportation all require large amounts of energy. With electricity and gas prices at record highs, food suppliers have no choice but to increase prices. Labour shortages in farming and food distribution. Brexit and stricter immigration rules have led to fewer farm workers and truck drivers, making food harvesting and delivery more expensive and less efficient. Extreme weather and climate change. Unpredictable weather patterns have affected crop yields, leading to lower supply and higher prices for fruits, vegetables, and grains. With food prices rising much faster than wages, many households are struggling to afford even the basics. And with no signs of relief soon, food insecurity is becoming a growing concern across the UK. Number 6. Higher taxes and national insurance increases. Are you finding that more of your paycheck is disappearing before it even reaches your bank account? That's because taxes and national insurance (NI) contributions have increased, leaving millions of people with less disposable income at a time when they need it most. But why are taxes rising? And how is it affecting everyday people? National insurance hike. In 2022, the government increased national insurance contributions by 1.25 percentage points, meaning workers had to pay more out of their wages. Although this was later reversed, the temporary hike still left many struggling with higher deductions. Frozen tax thresholds. While wages have slightly increased for some, tax thresholds have remained the same. This means more people are being pushed into higher tax brackets, effectively paying more tax without earning more in real terms, something known as fiscal drag. Council tax increases. Local councils have raised council tax to cover funding gaps in social care and public services. This has added hundreds of pounds per year to household bills. VAT and indirect taxes. The rising cost of goods and services has also led to higher VAT payments, further increasing the financial burden on consumers. Fuel duty, alcohol taxes, and other levies have also crept up. Cuts to benefits and tax credits. At the same time, welfare payments and tax credits have not kept up with inflation, leaving low-income households struggling even more. With taxes taking a bigger chunk of earnings, many families are left with less money for essentials like food, rent, and energy bills. And with no major tax cuts on the horizon, financial pressures will only continue to grow. Number 7. Transportation costs on the rise. Have you noticed that your daily commute or a simple trip to the supermarket is costing more than ever? That's because transportation costs in the UK have skyrocketed, making travel, whether by car, train or bus, more expensive than ever before. So, what's behind these rising costs? Fuel prices remain high. Petrol and diesel prices spiked in 2022, and although they have slightly dropped since, they remain far higher than pre-pandemic levels. Global supply chain issues, oil market instability, and fuel duty taxes continue to push up prices at the pump. Train fare increases. Rail travel in the UK is already among the most expensive in Europe, and ticket prices continue to rise every year. In 2023, train fares increased by up to 5.9%, adding hundreds of pounds per year for regular commuters. Bus and public transport costs rising. With fewer government subsidies and increasing operational costs, bus and tram fares in cities like London, Manchester, and Birmingham have gone up, making public transport less affordable. Higher car ownership costs. It's not just fuel. Car insurance, road tax, and maintenance costs have all gone up. Many people who previously relied on personal vehicles are now struggling to keep them on the road. Brexit and supply chain disruptions. The UK's exit from the EU has led to increased import costs for vehicle parts and maintenance, making repairs and new car purchases more expensive. With transport costs eating into household budgets, many people are cutting back on travel or even reconsidering their job locations. Unfortunately, for those who rely on commuting, these costs are unavoidable. Number 8. NHS and healthcare costs. Increasing. The NHS is meant to provide free healthcare, but have you noticed that medical costs are creeping up? From longer waiting times to rising prescription charges, many people are finding that accessing healthcare in the UK is becoming more expensive and difficult. So, what's causing this rise in healthcare costs? NHS funding shortages. The NHS is under immense financial pressure, with funding not keeping up with demand. This has led to staff shortages, delayed treatments, and longer waiting times, pushing some people towards expensive private healthcare. Rising prescription charges. In England, prescription costs increase almost every year. As of 2023, a single prescription costs £9.65, and many people who need multiple medications struggle to afford them. Dental costs at an all-time high. NHS dental care is becoming harder to access, with many people forced to pay for private treatment or go without dental care altogether. The cost of even a basic checkup can be a financial burden for low-income families. Long NHS waiting lists. Pushing people to private healthcare. With record waiting times for GP appointments, surgeries, and specialist treatments, more people are turning to private healthcare, which comes at a high cost. Private medical insurance is also becoming more expensive. Social care and care home costs rising. For elderly or disabled individuals, the cost of care homes and social care services has increased significantly, putting pressure on families to cover these expenses out of pocket. With healthcare costs climbing and NHS services struggling to keep up, access to affordable medical care is becoming a serious issue for many in the UK. Number 9. Childcare and education expenses. For many parents in the UK, childcare and education costs have become a financial nightmare. Whether it's nursery fees, after-school care, or university tuition, families are struggling to keep up with the ever-increasing expenses of raising and educating their children. So, what's driving these rising costs? UK childcare costs. Among the highest in the world. The UK has some of the most expensive childcare fees globally, with full-time nursery costs for a child under 2 averaging over £14,000 per year. Many parents, especially mothers, are forced to reduce working hours or leave jobs because they simply can't afford childcare. Lack of government support. While there are some free childcare hours available, many families don't qualify, and the available subsidies don't cover enough hours to make a real difference. This leaves parents paying huge out-of-pocket costs. Staff shortages and higher wages for childcare workers. The childcare sector is facing severe staff shortages, forcing nurseries to increase wages to attract workers. While this is necessary, these costs are passed on to parents through higher fees. School-related expenses. Adding up, even though education is free, hidden costs, such as uniforms, school trips, and extracurricular activities, place additional financial strain on families. The price of school meals has also increased significantly. University tuition fees and student debt. Higher education remains costly, with university tuition fees capped at £9,250 per year in England. Combined with rising living costs, students are graduating with massive debt, making financial independence even harder to achieve. With wages stagnating and financial support lacking, many parents and students are feeling the squeeze like never before. Number 10. Economic uncertainty and Brexit impact. The UK economy has been facing one crisis after another, and uncertainty about the future is making things even worse. From Brexit disruptions to global economic instability, businesses and consumers alike are feeling the pressure. So how has economic uncertainty and Brexit contributed to the cost of living crisis? Brexit disrupting trade and supply chains. Leaving the EU has led to increased trade barriers, import taxes, and customs checks, making goods more expensive. Businesses that relied on EU imports and exports now face higher costs, which are passed on to consumers. Worker shortages in key sectors, many industries, from hospitality and farming to healthcare and transport, relied on EU workers. Since Brexit, tighter immigration rules have caused staff shortages, leading to higher wages, reduced services, and rising costs for businesses and customers. Declining value of the pound. The UK's economy has been unstable, and a weaker pound means imported goods are more expensive. Whether it's food, electronics, or fuel, a declining currency means you're paying more for everyday essentials. Business closures and reduced investment. With ongoing uncertainty, many businesses are struggling or shutting down. Less investment in the UK economy means fewer jobs, lower wages, and higher prices for goods and services. Rising interest rates and cost of borrowing. To combat inflation, the Bank of England has raised interest rates, making mortgages, loans, and credit card debt more expensive, further squeezing household budgets. With no clear economic recovery plan in sight, the UK's cost of living crisis is set to continue, affecting millions of people. The UK's cost of living crisis isn't just a temporary problem, it's a deep-rooted economic disaster affecting millions. From skyrocketing rents and food prices to stagnant wages and rising taxes, every aspect of daily life has become more expensive. And with no real solutions in sight, the struggle is only getting worse. So what can we do? While individuals can budget smarter and seek financial support, real change has to come from policy reforms, economic stability, and long-term solutions. Until then, families across the UK will continue to feel the financial squeeze. The question now is, how are you dealing with this crisis? Have you had to cut back on spending, move to a cheaper area, or make difficult financial decisions? We want to hear your stories. Drop a comment below and let's talk about it. Your voice matters. We put a lot of effort into creating these videos to bring you the most insightful, well-researched content. If you found this video valuable, please take just 1 second to hit that subscribe button. It's completely free, but it helps us keep making content like this.